Rikers Island isn't just some regular jail. It's a whole different beast. Sitting on 413 acres of land between Queens and the Bronx, this place has been holding it down as one of the largest jail complexes in the world. Back in the wild 90s, Rikers was packed wall to wall with over 20,000 inmates. These days, the number has dropped to around 7,000, but don't get it twisted. The chaos, the violence, and the reputation still alive and kicking. Rikers earned some brutal nicknames over the years. They called it Gladiator School because of all the fights, Torture Island, thanks to the constant abuse and mistreatment, and when summer rolled through, it turned into the oven. No AC, just concrete and steel soaking up that New York heat like a furnace. The stories that came out of Rikers, pure nightmare fuel. From Tupac to Sid Vicious to Mark David Chapman, some major names did time there. But beyond the celebs, this place has been home to some of the most dangerous gangsters out the streets. In this video, we're diving into the 5 most infamous ones to ever walk them Rikers cell blocks. Sundance Oliver was a straight-up problem in the streets, a name that rang out heavy from East New York to Crown Heights. Word is he was affiliated with the Loop Gang, a violent blood set out of the pink houses. His rap sheet, long as Fulton Street, over 30 arrests, sealed cases, and charges ranging from robbery to murder. He'd been deep in the game since he was 12, and law enforcement even labeled him a one-man crime wave. Back in 2010, he caught a gang assault charge. 2 years later, police caught him with a weapon. By 2013, he was locked up for robbery and ended up serving 5 out of a 6-year bid. But when he got out, the streets didn't get any quieter. He was back in trouble soon after, and by late 2022, he unleashed a wild 4-day rampage that had the whole city on edge. It all started on December 2nd, when someone fired shots into a moving car at 444 Ralph Avenue with Oliver inside. He wasn't hit, but that moment seemed to light a fuse. 2 days later, on December 4th, he chased someone he thought was the shooter into a bodega at Ralph Avenue and St. Mark's. But once inside, he realized it wasn't who he thought. So on the spot, he changed plans and robbed someone else instead. According to witnesses, he even tried to shoot the store manager, but his gun jammed at first. Still, he fired off 2 shots, didn't hit anyone, but robbed the whole place clean. Cash, lotto money, everything, walking out with $3,500. The next day, December 5th, around 9:30 a.m., he tried to rob a woman at gunpoint in Crown Heights. During the struggle, a shot went off and struck a 96-year-old man in a wheelchair waiting for the bus. That man survived, but just 6 hours later, Oliver was in Lower Manhattan, inside an apartment at the Smith houses. Police say he shot and killed 21-year-old Kevon Langston, somebody he actually knew. Then came midnight. At the Kingsborough houses in Bed-Stuy, a 17-year-old girl named Kiera Rattray Brothers got shot in the chest. She didn't make it. By 4 a.m., the manhunt was on full blast. Cops called Oliver armed and extremely dangerous. His tattoos were blasted all over the news, especially the big green rose with Rich Forever on his neck. 3 days later, on December 7th, Oliver turned himself in at the 77th precinct. Surveillance caught him walking in with his hands up. Cops swarmed him with guns drawn, brought him to the ground, and arrested him. Chief Keechant Sewell said the only reason he gave up was because he had no more hiding spots left. His face was everywhere. But Oliver wasn't done acting out. After being locked up, he went wild inside the station, breaking chairs, yelling, violent. Cops had to wrestle him down and send him to Kings County Hospital. Once cleared, he was hauled off to central booking in shackles. When reporters caught him outside the next day, he spoke up like it was a performance. Told them, "It's me y'all been waiting for."
Oh, it's me, huh? That's what y'all been waiting for? It's me. Y'all been waiting for me?
Why did you do it?
Then stayed quiet after that. But what came out in court hit even harder. Prosecutors said Oliver planned to shoot up the 77th precinct. The only reason he didn't go through with it, his pregnant girlfriend begged him not to. According to a cop, Oliver straight up said, "Call my girl and thank her. I was going to walk in there and start shooting." She cried, pleaded, told him to turn himself in for her and their baby. That's the only reason he didn't add more names to his list. And now, after all that chaos, he's sitting at Rikers, facing a mountain of charges and the weight of every life touched by his trail of violence. But ever since Oliver landed at Rikers, it's been straight chaos. Bro been wilding. According to the NY Post, he's attacked 45 correction officers and even went after 3 civilians. The wildest part, they say he seriously hurt 2 officers to the point of almost killing them in his latest outburst. One of the officers caught up in that madness shared her story. She and her partner were just walking Oliver back from the showers when he switched up out of nowhere. He snatched the waist chain he had on and started swinging it like a weapon. Things got ugly real fast. He wrapped that chain around her and tried to choke her out, then slammed her into a wall, then into some chairs, all while locking her in a bear hug so tight she couldn't even lift her arms to fight back. She's just 5 feet tall, about 150 pounds. Oliver, he's 6 feet 190, straight overpowering her. Then he turned on her partner, grabbed her by the hair, punched her over and over, slammed her into a wall, then into chairs like she was nothing. It wasn't until backup pulled up that they finally got him off them. One of the officers involved, a 7-year veteran, said the whole thing messed her up bad. She can't stop replaying it in her head, almost getting choked out, watching her partner get beat down. She's cut herself off from her family because she says unless you've worked in Rikers, you'll never understand that type of trauma. She's scared for her safety now and barely even sleeps, saying violent inmates like Oliver need to be locked down all day, every day. In her eyes, correctional officers already live like they're locked up when they on the clock. Add violent assaults to that and it's damn near unbearable. The issue runs deeper too. Rikers can't even use solitary confinement like they used to. City Council passed a ban on punitive segregation last year, trying to change things up, but Mayor Eric Adams signed an executive order to bring it back, and now the whole thing's tied up in court. Meanwhile, the Correction Officers Union is just begging the city to do something, anything, to protect their people. Dwight Reed, better known on the streets as Dick Wolf, is the man behind the rise of the untouchable Gorilla Stone Nation. Over 2 decades ago, he laid the foundation for what would become one of the most violent and far-reaching blood sets in the country. This wasn't just some local clique. Gorilla Stone turned into a nationwide operation, stretching from the streets of New York City, Westchester, and upstate, all the way down to Florida and beyond. Even behind prison walls, they kept pushing, recruiting, and expanding. The gang breaks down into sections they call caves, each with its own set of leaders who report up the chain. Names like Money Gang Cave, Immortal Stone Gorilla Gang Cave, and Rain Cave ring bells in the streets. They got 2 different ranking systems too, one for those on the inside prison lineup and one for the ones still outside street lineup. That structure made them dangerous, disciplined, and deadly. This crew wasn't just about drugs and guns, they were cold with it. Gorilla Stone moved like a business with rules, ranks, and enforcement squads. And they didn't just talk tough, they acted on it. In 2018, a rival got his face slashed wide open right on 125th in Manhattan. That same year, there was a shooting in Brooklyn and a stick-up in Peekskill tied to the gang. Then, in July 2020, things got even crazier. At a Miami house party, a gambling beef turned violent when a Gorilla Stone member started shooting. One dude caught a bullet in the leg, another got hit in the foot when the shot bounced. And as if that wasn't wild enough, other members pulled out guns too and started letting off. Just 2 weeks later, they were linked to a drive-by in New Rochelle, and then came something even darker. In September 2020, in the middle of the day on a street in Poughkeepsie, a Gorilla Stone member drove a shooter to the scene, handed him the gun, and told him exactly where to go. A 15-year-old named Jelani Jones was shot in the head and killed in front of innocent bystanders, including children. After the murder, they burned the getaway car and made sure everyone wiped their social media clean. This wasn't random violence, it was calculated. Then came October 24th, 2020. Two rivals got shot outside a strip club in Miami. One had to be airlifted. Again, Gorilla Stone's name came up. Now, substances were a big part of their hustle, but that wasn't the only way they got money. These dudes were knee-deep in fraud too, and not just petty scams. Gorilla Stone was pulling off organized, high-level schemes. One of their biggest plays came during the COVID-19 pandemic when they ran a nationwide unemployment benefits scam and pocketed serious money. As for Reed, he's locked up now, serving 50 years to life for a cold-blooded execution that went down in a Harlem bar back in 2014. Authorities said he shot a man point blank in the forehead after an argument, then pistol whipped the lifeless body. But even from behind bars, Reed kept calling shots. In 2024, he caught another 35-year sentence for continuing to run Gorilla Stone's drug and fraud operations from prison. Even locked away, Dick Wolf stayed in control. Malik Harrell, better known on the streets as Mo Money, came up out of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. He wasn't just some regular dude in the neighborhood. He was known to have co-founded what was called the Bully Gang. Now, depending on who you ask, Bully Gang was either a rap group or a criminal organization terrorizing the streets of Brooklyn. Mo claimed it was music from the jump. According to him, Bully Gang was born when he and his cousins, barely 16 or 17, decided they weren't going to keep getting punked in the neighborhood. They flipped the word bully on its head, taking ownership of it. First, they went by the Little Bullies, but then rebranded as Bully Gang to make more noise in the rap scene. But reality had other plans. Mo's dreams of rap were sidetracked by the streets. After losing close friends to gun violence, including Charles Y.B. Williams, who was killed in 2015, Mo started hustling heavier. YB's murder was wild. It all went down in the early morning outside a hookah spot in Astoria, Queens. An argument led to bullets flying. Christopher King, just 23 at the time, ducked a few shots, ran to his car, grabbed his illegal gun, and let loose. He hit Williams 9 times, killing him. But when the smoke cleared, prosecutors said King was acting in self-defense. So while he got hit with gun charges, the murder itself got wiped off the city's books. What's crazy is that just days before that, Harrell himself was arrested in a separate Brooklyn murder case, but he walked free when the DA couldn't pull together enough evidence in time for a grand jury. Then, 2 years later in 2017, Mo allegedly came back for revenge. King was shot while leaving a Queens restaurant. He survived, but now the streets were buzzing that Mo and his people weren't letting anything slide. Bully Gang wasn't just local drama either. The gang had turned into a serious drug operation, running crack and a whole lot of drugs up and down the East Coast from New York to Maine. They used a system where members were sent up north to manage trap houses and keep the drugs moving. The money from the sales was being funneled through different bank accounts used to buy flashy items like a $68,000 white Range Rover and laundered through fake transactions. Mo's empire didn't stop at the state line, and it definitely didn't stop behind bars. Even after landing in Rikers Island in 2019 for a murder charge, Mo allegedly kept running the show from his cell. His gang was sneaking in substances using soap comic books and court transcripts. Corrupt correction officers were reportedly in on the game. At one point, investigators found 19 drug-laced comic book pages and court papers in Mo's cell. They say someone even mailed him a book soaked with synthetic drugs. In 2020, it all started to unravel. Almost a dozen people, including 2 Department of Education employees, were indicted. Authorities connected them to the multi-state drug trafficking ring involving secret compartments in cars, trap houses in Maine, and a money laundering setup involving DOE staffers wiring substance money to gang members. One paraprofessional was allegedly moving dirty money for the gang right out of a school building. When feds raided spots in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Maine, they found firearms, large sums of cash, drug supplies, and actual narcotics. The whole operation was bigger than just street-level dealing. This was organized crime. Harold now faces a laundry list of federal charges: racketeering, murder, conspiracy to murder, robbery, drug trafficking, bribery, and money laundering. And he's not alone. Many of his bully gang associates were caught up in the sweep too. If convicted, Mo and his crew could be facing life in prison, with minimums starting at 15 years and climbing up to 55. Now, before the streets ever saw red, white, blue, and green flying under the Trinitarios name, Leonidas Junito Sierra already had blood on his hands. He was locked up on Rikers Island back in 1989 for murder, facing 22.5 to life. And while sitting behind bars, he linked up with a few other Dominican inmates. They were tired of being targets, constantly pressed by gangs like the Bloods, Crips, and Latin Kings, so they formed their own, the Trinitarios. The name means Trinity Brotherhood, a nod to 3 Dominican revolutionaries who fought for their country's independence. The colors, red, white, and blue, rep the Dominican flag. That lime green, that was just to stand out, especially from their rivals, the DDP, who wore black. But these colors would come to mean something else entirely in New York's underworld. Sierra and his people weren't just building a crew, they were building a militant force. Their weapon of choice wasn't a gun, it was a machete, a farming tool back home, but in the hands of the Trinitarios, it became a statement. Violence wasn't random. It was organized, calculated, and always close and personal. After the gang was born, it didn't take long for the Trinitarios to hit the streets heavy, setting up deep in the Bronx and Washington Heights. And even though they started in prison, their reach spread fast through all 5 boroughs, the tri-state, up and down the East Coast, and even back to the Dominican Republic. They funded their movement with drug money, mainly crack and brown bag, but that wasn't all. They were deep in sex trafficking too, luring vulnerable women with smooth talk, drugs, and promises. Once in, the women couldn't leave. They were held hostage, moved around like property, and forced into illegal work. One NYPD source said they'd pass the girls around, letting men do whatever they want, trapping them in that life. As they grew, the Trinitarios didn't move sloppy at all. They kept things tight and organized. Nothing was random. You couldn't just pop up and start your crew without getting the green light first. They had real structure, bylaws, a strict chain of command, and weekly meetings like clockwork. Sometimes they met up in parks, other times at somebody's crib. Every member had to drop $5 in dues, and that money covered everything: bail, drugs, weapons, commissary, even baby diapers if needed. And before they wrapped things up, they always ended with a prayer. Everyone in a circle, heads down, arms crossed, hands locked. Discipline was no joke. They were people whose whole job was to make sure everybody stayed in line. If you broke the rules, punishment came quickly. Either you paid a fine or caught a serious beatdown. The gang ran like a well-oiled machine. There were commanders at every level, security heads to guard the stash and the squad, and even a war chief who handled business when things got messy. A central committee oversaw everything across all the sets, while the foot soldiers just did what they were told, no matter how brutal it was. Death, that was just part of the game. Recruitment focused heavy on vulnerable kids, especially in public high schools. New members got sponsored, handed a rule book, took an oath, and swore loyalty to the gang. In return, the Trinitarios handled debts, squashed beefs, and looked out for you in prison. But joining also meant getting beat in and staying ready for war. But even while behind bars, Sierra kept control. From prison, he was calling green lights, hits, on rival inmates and even on his own crew. In 2011, he tried to greenlight another Trinitario member on the outside, just because that man refused to recognize Sierra as a supreme leader. That kind of disrespect, it had to be punished. The plan was the usual Trinitarios way. Group up, swarm the target, and stab him up. The only reason it didn't go down was because the cops got to them first. To keep his grip strong, Sierra put together a central committee, a small group responsible for spreading his orders to all street leaders. While he was running the show from prison, Trinitarios in the Bronx and Manhattan stayed busy, pulling off murders and shootings. And they didn't just target enemies, they turned on their owner too when needed. Decades later, the Trinitarios have become one of the fastest growing and most violent gangs in New York. Their network stretches across countries, their money flows through drugs and human trafficking, and their loyalty still traces back to Sierra. Even now, he's still locked up, doing another 19 years since 2014 for continuing to run the gang from his cell, still giving out orders, still pulling strings, still sending bodies to the ground. Omar Porti, better known in the streets as OG Mac, was the spark behind the whole movement. Back in 1993, while locked up inside Rikers Island, he founded the United Blood Nation, or UBN. And he didn't just start a gang, he sparked off one of the most aggressive prison-based organizations the East Coast had ever seen. Porti came up rough. Raised by his grandmother, he was out in them streets early, catching robbery charges by 17. But things really shifted in 1987 when he witnessed a murder in the Bronx. Don Taylor shot Terrence Joyner right in front of him. Porti testified, helped put Taylor away for 22 to life, and in return got a break on his own charges. Instead of doing decades, he pled out and walked after just 21 months. But the streets pulled him right back. In 1992, he got popped again for gun possession and landed at Rikers Island. That spot was deep with Latino gangs like the Inmates and Latin Kings, and black inmates were catching it bad. So Porti made a move. He organized, pulled together a crew, pushed back on the oppression, and laid the foundation for what would become UBN. He brought in ideology, sets, codes, and rules. He didn't just run the yard, he transformed it. By the time correction officers caught on, it was too late. The Bloods ran phones, slashed rivals, and spread like wildfire through the system. They'd mark phones with red bandanas, and if you touched one without permission, you might walk away with a permanent telephone, a slash from your ear to your lip. Outside the walls, OG Mac's legend only grew. Once he got out in '99, he got straight to work, setting up UBN sets like 1-8 Trey, Sex Money Murder, and Gangsta Killer Bloods. Each had their style, codes, and hand signs. His base, 183rd and Davison in the Bronx. That's where he ran his empire. Drugs, prostitution, robberies, all running through his block. Youngins as young as 16 got brought in, jumped for 31 seconds, then handed a gun. They were told to earn their stripes with violence. It was about structure, survival, and making your name. And for a lot of lost kids, it felt like family. By the early 2000s, UBN had locked down prisons all across the East Coast. But even with their size, they weren't always unified. Sets beefed with each other and even clashed with the West Coast Bloods. Still, they made their bread through drugs, robberies, and extortion. Violence was the currency and territory was everything. It all caught up with Porti in 2002. He got hit with 10 counts: racketeering, conspiracy, drug trafficking, even murder. The feds weren't playing. By April 2003, he got sentenced to 50 years. These days, Porti is sitting in ADX Florence, the infamous federal supermax in Colorado. He briefly got moved to a lower security prison in 2021 under the step-down program, but by January 2022, he was right back in ADX. You see, New York City jails have been wild for decades, especially Rikers Island. Way back in the 70s and 80s, people were already calling it out for being overcrowded, filthy, and straight up dangerous. It got so bad that even under Mayor Ed Koch, people were talking about shutting the whole place down. And that noise, it never really stopped. Fast forward to now, and things aren't just bad, they are worse. Violence behind them walls has been up heavy. People inside are dealing with nasty conditions. barely any staff to keep things under control, and a scary rise in self-harm. It got so out of hand that Mayor Bill de Blasio had to support shutting the place down for real. Now the system has finally hit a breaking point. After years of lawsuits, complaints, and nonstop violence, a federal judge had to step in. On May 13th, Manhattan Judge Laura Swain made it official. New York City lost control of its jails. A third-party remediation manager is about to take over. This isn't just somebody sitting in meetings either. Judge Swain made it clear this manager is going to have real power to fix what's broken. They'll still work with the city's correction department, but if things need changing, they've got the green light to make moves. By August 29th, both the city and the Legal Aid Society have to submit 4 names each for the position. Judge Swain will choose who gets it. It may not be called receivership, but let's be real, that's exactly what this is. Rikers is officially out of the city's hands. Appreciate you watching. If you liked it, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.